All right. We are live. We are the Game Reactionists, and tonight we are reacting to the year so far and what's to come. I am Rorschach, and with me I have...
You have Spectre.
And we're just going to talk about some stuff we've done with video gaming this year, what we're looking forward to, maybe even some news highlights. I'll start off right away. It's been a pretty packed year. What did you say, Spectre?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is a very, very fat year. It's big and beautiful so far. It's got a lot of games packed in, a lot of pretty good quality stuff actually. There's a lot of good games in there too. It's not just a lot of garbage. It's a lot of really actually pretty decent quality stuff. And it feels like it's just been like 2 or 3 years worth of games just meshed into 1 year. So
Yeah.
it's been pretty exciting. Almost it's kind of almost been like exhausting in a way. It's been like, okay, I gotta finish this game, and there's another game I'm looking forward to next month, and then the month after that I got this looking forward to. So it's just been it's very unusual, especially for me. I'm so like picky normally, and it's just kind of weird to have like just game after game after game to play. And it's so I mean I'll get that out there right away. I'm a very picky person. This is our first like podcast, so I'll get that out there in the ether right away. That's just where I'm coming from. But yeah, normally very picky, but yeah, I just had we're gonna go for a list here, but I mean there's a lot of stuff this year.
I've been pretty picky too. Generally, you like what you like, and I think a lot of this year has to do with just a lot of things that were delayed, due to the pandemic. And I hope that's the only time we mention that word for this podcast and going forward. I'm just going to show like a handful of games. This is just a handful of games. This isn't even all the games that I've played or beaten, but these are the ones that I could quickly find. So Hogwarts Legacy, of course. I got them in my box protector, so sorry if the glare. Dead Space Remake, pretty happy with that. Resident Evil 4 Remake, I was extremely happy with that. This is my steelbook of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And then Pikmin 4 is the latest Nintendo release. Still haven't opened that one yet. But yeah, it's been pretty wild. I kind of, before we went live, I made a quick list of games that I've played and or beaten or are currently playing. So Dead Space Remake, you and I have both played that one. What are your thoughts?
So kind of launched into it right away. So yeah, Dead Space, and that's I think it's kind of starting off with kind of a difference between how we approach these usually. I'm very much a 100%er. I like to get all the achievements. I like to complete the game backwards and forwards, inside out. That's how I consider my games complete. So I've completed Dead Space now, Dead Space Remake, like 3 playthroughs into it to get all the achievements and stuff like that. So I've had a pretty thorough experience with the game. And yeah, I mean I think it's honestly I really enjoyed it. I'm of course a Dead Space fan. I really enjoyed the original Dead Space. I very much enjoyed Dead Space 2. I think that's just legitimately a fantastic game. Dead Space 3, of course, disappointing, and it's sad that it kind of killed the series for up until basically just recently. And even some of the side space, the Dead Space games were actually okay. I like the rail shooter that was on the Wii. Dead Space Extraction was actually kind of okay. Some of the other media related to Dead Space was actually okay. So I'm very much vested in the universe of Dead Space. So it was just the idea of a remake coming out was enticing to me. I'd say, I mean, in terms of just to give my really quick summation of the game, I think it was fantastic. I think it was really well done. Visually, it is extremely appealing. It's a huge upgrade from what we had before, and that's really saying something because the original Dead Space is not really all that old. I think it was like 2008 for the Dead Space, the original Dead Space release, and it looked pretty fantastic at its time. And it looks way better now. I like the visual style of it. I like the look of it. Everything they've updated and changed on it, and they've added a couple of things to it in terms of gameplay and side quests and things like that. They made the game a little bit semi-open world. The The original Dead Space was very much divided into levels, but now it's more semi-open world.
Everything's got to be open world nowadays, huh?
Right? Yeah, it's like a mandate that they have, a permanent marker up on their whiteboard, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, the long and short of it is, I really, really enjoyed Dead Space. Had a fantastic time with it. I hope we get a remake of Dead Space 2. I will address the controversy, and I think we've talked about it a little bit before, and I've talked a lot about this outside of recordings as well too. And there was a little bit of controversy with the game in terms of the updates that were going to come to it, and we all knew there was going to be some changes and some updates to the game. It seems like this is a trend with a lot of remakes nowadays, and it's not just EA doing that. But the EA has kind of done that before in recent history too, with Mass Effect to a much lesser degree than it did with Dead Space.
Oh, you're talking about the social updates?
Yeah, the social political changes, and really they are and speaking as someone that that disagrees strongly with the changes, I think it's such a minor part of the game that it's basically you blink and you miss it. You're not really going to even notice it. More or less, if you're a casual fan of the series, there is just a lot of like really small changes, and some of them are blatantly, I think, politically correct, and it's kind of obvious why they were done for that reason, and that's just the culture of EA, I guess, and that's just what they felt that they wanted to do to the game for a modern re-release or a remake. So I disagree with those changes strongly. I don't think it ruins the experience. I still highly recommend the game. I hope we get a Dead Space remake 2. Dead Space 2 remake, I should say. And yeah, I mean, overall, I really enjoyed it. I think if you look past those, very small, minor flaws, then it is a really enjoyable experience. I had a great time with it.
Yeah, I would agree. I very much enjoyed the game. Some of the changes that I can't say I didn't care for. I just didn't think were necessary. Of course, the socio-political changes and additions were, completely unnecessary. But I don't know how I feel about Isaac speaking in the remake. I don't mind his voice actor. He didn't do a terrible job. He didn't talk in the first game originally, and I kind of appreciated the silent protagonist. And they kind of switched the end of the remake as well, because in the original game, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but in the original game, you find out that the marker was basically causing you to hallucinate that Nicole was there, and she was never there all along, and then that was the big twist. But in this game, in the remake, they changed it to where you were seeing Nicole, but it wasn't a hallucination per se, because it was an actual person. The marker was just putting Nicole's face on that person, and then that same person was viewing Isaac as her boyfriend, who she thought was dead too. So it was like a twist on the twist.
That's a very minor change, though. I mean, it's still the marker causing hallucinations in both people.
Right? No, I'm not. Hold on. I'm not saying I hate. I'm not saying I hated it. It's just one of those things. Like, what does that really do for us, narratively speaking? Did that have to take place? And then it made me think. It just made me think about other remakes where they make changes to original storylines, and I was thinking about Silent Hill 2 remake, and I want to talk about that later on in the podcast. I don't want to address that now, but it made me think about that. But overall, I did enjoy my time with Dead Space remake. You are correct. I'm not a completionist in the sense I don't go after every trophy or achievement. I have too many games to play to do that. I want to play it if I enjoy it enough and want to do a harder setting to unlock some cool features or extras. I'll do that. But otherwise, I'm just ready to game and go and move on.
And I'm not knocking that at all. I'm just saying that there's a difference in how we approach things. I'm not saying one way is right or wrong.
Right.
It's just and there's the disadvantage to my approach is you kind of implied it there too, is that naturally I have less time for if you're spending a lot of time in one game. I mean, Dead Space, I think I spent like 50 hours in. That's 50 hours I didn't spend in a smear of a whole bunch of other games too. So I mean, that's how it is. But yeah, no, you're right. There was a lot of very minor changes to Dead Space. I think there's actually I'm actually looking at a chapter by chapter, like, little changes that they made, and that's fine. I mean, it doesn't have to be like a one for one thing, especially for Dead Space of all things. Dead Space never really had a very strong story. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I didn't play for the story.
No one was here for the deep lore. It was here for Dead Space 1 was very effective in terms of its combat feel and its atmosphere, and I think they captured that really well. If anything, the atmosphere is way better, I think, now because of the scares that come from the AI director, that's this terror director that's working in the background to try to make sure that there's a consistent amount of tension throughout the game. So I think with that, it's actually in some ways a lot better, because it does kind of get you sometimes, like when you're especially when you're backtracking for an area, all of a sudden something will pop out of a vent or something. It's like I wasn't expecting that,
Right.
So that I really enjoyed the experience. I really hope we get Dead Space 2 as a remake, because Dead Space 2 took everything that 1 did and just dialed it up to 11. It was a much better experience. I really enjoyed Dead Space 2, and hopefully we get that.
Yeah, I would hope so too. And this is a good way to segue into the next game, Resident Evil 4. Hopefully we can keep this going a little quicker here. We got a lot of stuff to cover.
Oh yeah, I know we got a lot to go over. I'm dwelling on a couple of games that are really favorites here. And I think Resident Evil 4 is one we can probably both talk about for
hours.
At least an hour. Hours. Yeah.
Resident Evil 4. Now that is one because that is one where I ran into the problem that I ran into your issue with Dead Space. You have Dead Space on PC. I bought Resident Evil 4 on Xbox and PlayStation. A lot of people tease me or question why I do that. If there's a series or a game that I enjoy that much, I don't have a problem buying it on multiple platforms and playing it on those multiple platforms. If nothing else, I'm giving more money to the developers. I'm basically telling them with my dollar, like, hey, I like what you're doing. Please keep doing this. That's kind of my mindset. And I have 4 completions of Resident Evil 4 on Xbox and 4 completions of it on PlayStation. I haven't done my professional run yet, but I've done 8 total runs of that game. But I really enjoyed it that much. It was a very, very good remake. We talked about this in videos past. Resident Evil 4 was not the next coming of Christ for me when it comes to survival horror or video games in general, like it is for others. I thought it was an adequate game for its time. I thought it was fine, but I don't think it aged all that well in terms of its visuals. And I really was not looking forward to the remake of it. As more press came along, as more video came along, and the demo came out, I was really blown away at how much I enjoyed it. And then when I actually picked it up, I was like, oh my goodness, this game is so much so much better than the original, in my opinion. And so replaying it all those times, I can't remember the last game I replayed that frequently back to back to back. I don't know if I've ever done that. I think the last game I might have done that was maybe Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 back when it was released on PlayStation 2.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, 8 playthroughs. I mean, that's a lot, especially in a short period of time. I mean, it hasn't really even been out longer than 5 months. So that's more than a playthrough per month. So that's right. Pretty that's pretty extensive, But yeah, no, I mean, for me, I had a very different take on it. If anything, I was kind of the exact opposite. I was very much I still am very much a fan of the original Resident Evil 4. I think it's a no-brainer inclusion if you're ever going to do a top 100 games of all time or top 50 games of all time. I think it's a no-brainer inclusion in a list like that. It is a fantastic game.
I think
even if you're not a Resident Evil fan, I think it's just a really enjoyable game all around. It's a blast to play. I think it holds up pretty well. I just replayed it this year. Twice actually this year. I decided to do a professional run. I wanted to get all the achievements, of course, because that's what I do. Mm-hmm. So I played through it twice, and it holds up today. I had just as much fun playing it as I did way back in 2004 when I played it on the GameCube. So I think it holds up really well. The remake also fantastic. You can two things can be true at once. You can like both. They're both great games, and I think they both are I see the new one as the remake that just came out as kind of a really fantastic cover song. And sometimes a cover song is just as good, if not better, than the song that it's based on. And that can often be the case. And in this case, I love the gameplay changes to it. I like the like just even little things like adding the charms and stuff like that, like little things, the extra little side things to find. It feels like it's a lot more in depth. I like that about it. I like the like kind of like the upgrade system on it. Everything just feels a little bit more fleshed out and better. And I mean, obviously, graphically, it looks just amazing. Gorgeous. Gorgeous looking game.
I really like Resident Evil, the RE engine that they use. I mean, that is a very good gaming engine. I really like it.
It's beautiful, but it doesn't seem to compromise on performance or anything. It ran great. I had zero issues with the game. I really didn't even have to. I play everything on PC, by the way, but I didn't really have to tweak it at all or really change much of anything. Everything just kind of worked, and it just worked. So it was a great experience. If I really want to be like super nitpicky, I would get into how I didn't care for some of the voice acting changes. Like some of the newer voice actors I thought were good, or in some cases just as good as the original. Some I thought were just objectively bad. Like, I don't like Ada's new voice actress. I'm sorry, it just was not a great performance. If anything, there's been
and now we're canceled.
Right? Yeah, I didn't care for that performance, unfortunately. And there were some other really minor changes. I think there was actually some kind of, you could say, just like Dead Space, there were some politically correct changes done to the game. And I didn't care for those. I very much enjoy the goofy tone of the original.
Are you talking about the skirt? Is that what you're talking about?
The skirt and not just the skirt. The changes
all
to
the one-liners.
The one-liners and the changes to Ashley's personality. I mean, it's like I said, I'm very much in the nitpicking stage right now, and I understand that a lot of people just don't care. It's just a good game, just enjoy it. You don't have to think about this type of stuff. But I really liked that playful element of the original. It felt like an action movie, and a lot of times action movies kind of had that kind of goofy sense of humor to them, and I really enjoyed that about the original. So if anything, that makes the original more distinct than this one, because it stands out and has that as it's kind of a feature to it.
I will say I don't know if I'd put that on par as the changes made in Dead Space. And you and I have spoken about this offline. I'm definitely one of those people where I just did not mind that at all in terms of the remake. And speaking of the remake, Capcom,
I was just saying, like, in terms of like the impact. Like, I mean, for both games, it's a very minute part of the game. Like, blink and you'll miss it for the most part.
Yeah. By the way, Capcom, we all know about the supposed extra achievements. So, what's up?
Yeah, what's our DLC, right? Yeah.
What's up with this DLC? Come on, give it to us.
I'm looking at my Steam profile right now. I lost my 100%.
It's been data mined. Okay, so Capcom, give it to us.
Give it to us. I see 7 new achievements added. I don't have 100% anymore in the game. Where's my achievements?
Maybe Gamescom. We got Gamescom at the end of August. Maybe we'll get an announcement then. Moving right along, I'm going to touch base on a couple of games that you may not have played, but I think you watched me play. These are games that I haven't finished, but have started. First was Atomic Heart. We both kind of sat through the playthrough on that. I experienced that on Game Pass.
It looked pretty good, yeah.
It looked pretty good. I did get out of the when I played it. I got to like the underground bunker area as like shit was hitting the fan. I've gotten out of that bunker area and have gotten into like the main overworld. And this is I'm gonna talk about open world very soon here, because I was just thinking about this within the last week. And that's where I stopped. So I'm maybe like a couple hours into Atomic Heart. Enjoyed what I played so far. I'm intrigued. I do want to see it through. It's very much got a BioShock feel to it. And I did enjoy BioShock and BioShock Infinite. So we'll see with that. And then Kirby's Return to Dreamland on Switch. That also came out this year. That's just a remake of Return to Dreamland. And it had some extra features and bonuses to the Switch remake. We sat through that. It's a fun platformer. It's perfect for the kids. Even if you're an adult, adults can enjoy that stuff too. It's no secret to the channel or to anybody that knows me personally, I'm a big Nintendo guy. I like their product, and I think it's perfectly fine. Any thoughts on either of those games before we move along to the next?
Yeah, no, I think Kirby is fine. I think it's okay to have it's a fine series. I think it's okay to have a kind of a beginners or easy game in some ways. That it's everyone has to have sort of an introduction to some of these mechanics. So it's good to have sort of a lighthearted intro kind of game that's meant to be kind of like your first platformer game or whatever you would call it. I think it's okay to have things like those.
Right, I would agree. And then I'm going to save kind of the best for last, but I'll touch on some other things that I played. Now, this game didn't come out this year, and it came out, I think, in November or December of last year. I just finally got around to it, and I kind of want to give my opinion on it, because it is relevant. Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. Now, I know this was a remake of a PSP game that came out in 2007, 2008. I never played it then. And I'm confident Square released this to kind of tide fans over while we wait for part 2 of Final Fantasy VII Remake. I was a big fan of Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's one of those games where I didn't care for the original. I understand its importance in gaming history, and anybody who's anybody is going to include that game in their top 50 video games of all time as well. It just didn't really strike anything with me. But when I played the remake, I was like, oh my gosh, this game is amazing. So I picked up Crisis Core, thinking I'd get something similar. And I'm going to give a little bit of a review on this game. The game is dog shit. I hated Crisis Core. There was not one thing enjoyable about that game. And the only reason why I saw it through is I'm kind of at the mindset, if I purchase a game, I'm gonna finish it, even if I hate it. So at least I don't feel suckered for buying it, I guess, is my motivation. It's just, it has the modern combat mechanics that you see in new Final Fantasies, and that was all well and good. What it does, though, is it ties your limit breaks, which are kind of like your super abilities, and your summons to a roulette mechanic. And it's completely RNG. It's just a roulette that is in your upper left hand corner. And in order for you to get a summon, you have to hope that your roulette tracks all 3 spaces to that summon in order for you to use it. I don't know why anybody thought that was a good idea, but it really pissed me off because I got to use Ifrit a couple of times. He's the big fire demon in Final Fantasy. I got to use him a couple of times in the game. I unlocked Bahamut. I unlocked Odin. Never got to use them in my 25-hour playthrough because the roulette never landed on them. I think that's a dog shit mechanic. I think that's completely asinine. It wasn't a good idea then. If that's what they had back then, why they kept it now is beyond me. And then there's a section in the game. This is Final Fantasy, right? So when you play Final Fantasy, you're thinking swords, magic, weapons of that nature. There's a section in this game, toward the end of the game, where all of a sudden you enter like this grassy field, and you're now doing a sniping section where you're picking up a sniper rifle and trying to snipe these machines in order to progress to help save Cloud. And I'm just thinking, why the hell would
I imagine it's not enjoyable, right?
It's not enjoyable because you're standing in place. It was not a good time, dude. And really, it was getting to a point where I was like, all right, I'm starting to like come around. It's not feeling as awkward, and I'm not as begrudging with playing this game. And then all of a sudden, I hit this sniping section. I'm like, you know what? I fucking hate this game. I hate this game. Sorry, I'm not trying to swear a whole lot, but it's just I'm very passionate about how much I did not enjoy this game. And it's really supposed to be it's a prequel, and you're supposed to see like the downfall of Sephiroth. it doesn't really do a good job, narratively speaking, explaining why he decided to become a bad guy. The way they showed it is like he finds out that Genova is his mother, and he came from Project Genova, or whatever the hell it was called. I don't even remember. I don't even care. Sound off in the comments if you want to attack me. I don't care. But he like locks himself in a library, reads a couple of books, and then decides, okay, I'm a bad guy. I'm gonna burn down an entire village now. There's something missing there. There's something in terms of a narrative. Anyway, that's my tangent on Crisis Core.
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, no, like I said, I'm not a Final Fantasy fan by any stretch of the imagination. I think the loose idea of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the whole reason why Sephiroth becomes a villain in that series is more or less because he realized that essentially, like the other soldiers or whatever, he was kind of being used by, I think it was Shinra or whatever, and they were made from Genova, and that was they were kind of they kind of exploited her to do that. So he kind of goes mad because of that. His whole worldview is completely shattered by that.
And he did develop a god complex as well. He realized that he was superior, and therefore it was incumbent upon him to rule over Midgard. And that's my interpretation from having played Final Fantasy VII original and remake. But Crisis Core, terrible game. Don't buy it. Don't even rent it. I wouldn't buy that game if it was $5. I rarely trade in games. Usually if I buy a game, it's because I'm confident that I'll want to keep it in my collection. I bought that game right away when it came out last year. When I finished it back in June, I got rid of it ASAP. I did not even want it next to my Final Fantasy VII Remake case. But I will segue into Final Fantasy 16. Complete 180. I did play the demo on that. That's a game where I did not pick up right away because I'm not a big Final Fantasy guy myself. There's 3 Final Fantasy games I legitimately enjoyed in the span.
Yeah, I don't think either of us would really call ourselves Final Fantasy acolytes or anything like that. I mean, I have a soft spot for Final Fantasy X because that was kind of the one I played as a kid, so I have warm and fuzzy feelings about that one despite its flaws. And I think it is a legitimate good game. It's fun. I like the old turn-based combat to it. I think some elements of the story of it are actually pretty interesting, other than the main character, which who I did not enjoy. I'm not a Titus fan. I don't think many people are.
No, nobody did.
The rest of the cast is actually
all about Auron.
Pretty okay.
It was all about Auron.
Yeah. Auron was fantastic. if you take away Titus and especially if you take away Wakka, I hate Wakka. If you take away those 2 characters, the rest of it's actually pretty good. So it's. Yeah, but yes, I think we could both safely say we are not Final Fantasy guys in general.
But
we do happen to play the games, or we've been exposed to it through a variety of things over time.
But I did play Final Fantasy 16. I played the demo. Very much enjoyed it. It is a game that I will pick up and buy. I'll probably do that later this year, around November or December, because I know Final Fantasy VII Part 2 is supposed to come out early next year, according to the teasers that we've seen over the summer, and so I figure by November, December, I'll pretty much be caught up on anything I want. Excuse me, or anything I have rather, and so I'll need something to kind of fill that gap. I think Final Fantasy 16 will be a perfect game to fill that gap because I know it's a bigger, more open world Final Fantasy 16 game. Played great, mechanics were great. The intro's a little bit of a lull, admittedly, but you kind of have that in most RPGs, and therefore that's okay. I think that'll be a perfect game to kind of fill that gap, from the end of the year till Final Fantasy VII Part 2 comes out.
If it ever makes its way over to Steam, I'll probably check it out.
I'm sure it will.
It's definitely not a day one buy or anything like that for me. Even when it makes it over there. Right,
and it wasn't for me either. It's one where I'm like, I can wait. I've got enough to get caught up on. I'll wait. Pikmin 4 came out this month. Haven't played it. I've never played any Pikmin games. But I did pick it up, in support of Nintendo. Pikmin 1 and 2 is coming out on Switch later this year. that is one that I'm going to pick up as well. So all of the Pikmins will be on the Switch at that point. So I'll probably just do a Pikmin marathon and play through all 4 of them right away and be able to talk about them with more. What am I trying to? Drawing a blank here. I'm having a brain fart. A live brain fart. Have more clarity on them, I guess. I don't know.
That works.
And then the last game I played so far for the year was Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And that was phenomenal. I enjoyed it. My experience with it, loved it. It really
I think it'd be safe to say that would probably be your, if I could go so far as to say, your personal game of the year so far.
So far, I'm looking at the list here. There's a couple games that could possibly, there's
that'll be you're right. That'll be the next thing we get to is the games that are still coming out this year. We're not done yet. You know, we're only just approaching August here. So I mean, we still have a good chunk of the year left. There actually is some good stuff coming.
Yeah, I would say, you know, if today was the end of the year, Tears of the Kingdom hands down would be my game of the year. It wouldn't even be any question. You know, a lot of people have their opinions of the direction of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And I'm one who very much enjoys the old school linearity of Zelda games. Going through the dungeons, you kind of have a point A to point B approach through those games, and I'm okay with that. Even Majora's Mask, where you kind of have a little bit more flexibility in how you go about your tasks, it's still fairly linear in terms of what you have to do in order to accomplish your goal. Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild really flipped the series on its head, and Breath of the Wild, I feel like, was the demo of how Nintendo wanted to approach an open world Zelda, and then Tears of the Kingdom was the true realization of what they actually wanted to do. Building in that game is a lot of fun. They have a lot more overworld bosses. They have actual bosses in the 4 main dungeons of the game itself. You're not just fighting variations of Blight Ganon like you were in Breath of the Wild. Ganondorf was fantastic. I loved seeing him in there. Matt Mercer did a fantastic job with the voice acting. I was a purist in terms of I didn't want voice acting in Zelda because that's what we grew up with. And when they announced that for Breath of the Wild, I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this. But I would say overall the cast does a very good job. Nintendo is smart and still left Link voiceless, and I think that is something you cannot ever change. I think if they give Link a voice, I don't know how I feel about that. You know, Miyamoto has always said that, you know, Link was supposed to be the literal link between you and the game, where it was you.
He's your avatar.
He's your avatar.
And if you put a voice to him, immediately there's a disconnect between you and that character to some degree.
Exactly. So, but overall, yeah, I enjoyed it. And there are some things where it's just kind of like, I wish they didn't have that, or they didn't do this, or they would have changed. But I mean, overall, I enjoyed my experience with it. It's a beautiful looking game, even by Switch standards. They really did a fantastic job of really optimizing that game for the Nintendo Switch, even though it is antiquated technology. It was antiquated technology when it launched. I mean, let's be honest. And
no. I mean, Nintendo hasn't really been about, you know, they haven't really been about being a graphical powerhouse since like the GameCube era. At this point, you know, I mean, it's really, you know, they go for a very different direction, and that's okay. Obviously, it's been working out for them for the most part, aside from the Wii U. So,
right,
you know, I mean, you know, so I mean, the Switch has been an incredible success, and you know, I'm very curious to see what they do with the next system, which we'll probably be hearing about relatively soon, I think.
Yeah. So that's what I've got to say about Tears of the Kingdom. I do want to segue quickly before we go into other games coming out and other news topics. But open world games. We kind of talked about this in Dead Space. Resident Evil 4 even kind of gives you this open world vibe to it within Resident Evil 4 Remake. Hogwarts Legacy. Oh, I don't even think I talked about Hogwarts Legacy. That game's starting to get on my nerves. Hogwarts Legacy. But we got Hogwarts Legacy.
We gotta talk about it though. I mean, it was arguably, in a very packed year, it's still arguably the most anticipated game of the year in some ways.
So when we played Hogwarts Legacy, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. And I was like, wow, this game plays well, the mechanics are fun, the combat is fluid, it looks great. Good for you, Portkey Games. Good for you, Warner Brothers. You gave us a good product. I've been playing it heavily as of late. It's getting to a point of exhaustion. And if I start to feel exhausted with a video game, then that's not a good sign. If I can play Resident Evil 4 Remake 8 times over and over again, the game is clearly fun. Or if I can play Tears of the Kingdom for 250 hours.
I think I know what you're kind of getting at. And I felt it to some degree too, even though I haven't put as many hours into it yet. And it actually is kind of the game I'm going to probably be playing next as I kind of wait. I'm in the waiting room right now for my next big game, which we'll talk about later. Mm-hmm. But I probably will play it some more. But I have been noticing that feeling that it does seem to be very repetitive. It doesn't really seem to be like blowing me away with fun. I mean, there's some games that you can just keep replaying over and over again, like a Resident Evil or like a Star Fox or like a Devil May Cry, where you can just keep replaying it over and over again. You still get that rush and that excitement because the moment-to-moment gameplay is really fun. And the moment-to-moment gameplay in Hogwarts Legacy is not very enjoyable to me.
It's not. It's not.
In general, it's not. Even the combat. Some of it's kind of okay, and sometimes there's a little bit of a rush to it. But I mean, in general, I feel like I am in a giant, Assassin's Creed castle filled with collectibles, and the combat is just as, simplistic and surface level as an Assassin's Creed game, and. Not that I'm knocking all of Assassin's Creed. I think there's good things about Assassin's Creed too, but it feels very repetitive, and it feels like a chore at some points to play. And now that I'm going to be putting a lot more time into it, I mean, we'll see. It probably will be even worse for me. So, I still want to finish it though, because that's my MO. I want to finish it. I started. I really would like to finish it.
Yeah, and so I can tell you. With absolute certainty, I will not be going after all the collectibles in Hogwarts Legacy. There are so many collectibles. People complain about the amount of Riddler trophies and Batman Arkham games.
I remember those, yeah.
That's nothing compared to the amount of crap you can find in Hogwarts Legacy. I mean, you have the invisible pages that give you lore, background on various locations in the game. You have the flying books. You have these like statues of what would appear to be monkeys holding like a glowing moon apparatus. Is really the best way.
You had those really goofy like doors and stuff. I didn't actually even understand how to open those until you explain it.
Yeah,
I'm like, what am I supposed to do with these? Like, I don't even want to like look this up. Like, just tell me. Just let me open the damn door.
Well, and actually stuff like that I don't mind because it's like, oh, cool, you gotta kind of have a quasi puzzle in here. That's cool.
It's really not a puzzle at all. It's more the only puzzle is just like figuring out like how it works, and all the doors work the same more or less. It's not like Myst where there's like this really
I know. I'm not comparing it to things like that. That's why I said it. It's a cool little puzzle, and then that was it. But you don't see anything like that ever again outside of those doors. There's even when you're unlocking your new wand abilities. You're just basically doing a minor QuickTime event while you're using your joystick or your mouse to go through the line appropriately. And the wand abilities and the magic powers you unlock, there's really no point to, I'd say 3/4 of them. I've unlocked all the magic abilities now. And I use the same 4, maybe 5 abilities out of the 20 or so abilities that are available. It's just, at that point, it's filler. It's just not meaningful. You know, there's no incentive for me to want to experiment with the other magic abilities. I can just mash right trigger. Oh, this guy's got a purple bubble around him, so I got to use one of the purple abilities to break the bubble so I can continue attacking him. There's nothing to it. And I don't mind open world games, but your game has to be consistently fun. I look at games like God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok, or Tears of the Kingdom, or Spider-Man on PlayStation 4. Those games are open world games, and there are collectibles in them, and there's quite a few collectibles in them. But it's not that big of a deal for me because it's fun to go after them. Even if you're not a big Spider-Man guy, it's fun to traverse the city of New York, web slinging as Spider-Man, dropping down on guys, using some web abilities on them, grabbing whatever collectible, and then moving along. Even when you unlock the broom in Harry Potter, it's just not exciting. And so that was a game where I
think they put a lot of effort. I mean, in very successfully, I might add, they put a lot of effort into building a really fun sandbox like that looks really nice, and there is some interesting things to do, and they filled it with a lot of stuff.
They did.
But
I think they were over ambitious. I think that's
in some ways
the way to put it.
I almost wish the game was just restricted just to Hogwarts itself, just the school itself, and there was no like maybe like Hogsmeade or whatever, you could go there or whatever, but just make it a little bit more focused, and then spend that extra time to really polish up the moment to moment gameplay, add some fun, interesting things to it, and just make it so it doesn't feel repetitive. I feel like when I like I said, last time I played, I felt like I was just going through a checklist. It's like, okay, I did this side quest, this side quest, this side quest. Okay, I'll do the main quest again. And like, I feel like I'm doing a list of chores, and it's never good when a game feels like a list of chores.
And the quests themselves, none of them feel all that varied. None of them feel all that exciring.
They didn't reinvent the wheel here. It's collect this, it's follow this thing and find that thing.
And I really don't want to shit on Portkey Games, because you could tell that they put a lot of love and care into the product. It's just I think being over ambitious might have been to their detriment. I really believe that maybe they could have scaled it back. You're right. Keep it to, I would say, have Hogwarts, Hogsmeade, and then there's like the Forbidden Woods or whatever outside of Hogwarts. That should have been your constrained area. In the Hogwarts Legacy game, there's still a whole other area outside of those 3 locations that I just mentioned. Like, that's just, it's way too big. It's not exciting enough. The game isn't even that long to warrant that whole other extra area. And you're not going to get any meaningful side quests or anything that's going to want to entice you to explore over there. And it's just,
and don't get us wrong, we're not poo-pooing the game really. It's more, I mean, let's be honest here too. This game was insanely successful. It sold like crazy.
Yeah,
it broke records. It had a very vocal boycotting campaign running against it, and it completely just shot right past that.
Right.
And this game is insanely successful. I imagine, I'm not sure what the budget was like to build this game, but the sales, I'm sure, have to have made up for it. There was a very aggressive marketing campaign for the game too, but I'm sure the sales had to have made up for it. I feel like it was like the entire zeitgeist of the gaming world for months, and it's all anyone would talk about. So I feel like it was it wasn't until Resident Evil came out where it started feel like we actually moved on from it to any degree. And I feel like we'll probably get some sort of sequel or follow up to this for sure. I mean, it's like almost goes without saying.
I hope the sequel, they maybe put a little, try to focus more on the game and just don't try to throw so much into it at once, because it's just, I got to a point where I was like, yeah, I'm gonna look for all the flying books and all the pages, and then it's like there's so many of them in each different area. It's like, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm just getting through
and they don't really do anything for you too. That's the other thing that about collectibles. That, I mean, it should be fun. It should be interesting. A collectible shouldn't just be a collectible. It should be something like, I mean, there's a lot of different examples of fun collectibles, but like think back to like something like BioShock. Like you wanted to really learn. I have my criticisms of BioShock. I don't think it's like a perfect game or anything like that. I have a lot of criticisms about the game, but one thing it did really well is I really wanted to learn more. It's very immersive. It's an it's an immersive sim. I wanted to learn more about the world itself. And the audio logs, that was kind of the incentive itself, just to find the audio logs. It was just to hear more about the lore of the world, or even you can do even fun stuff. Like I remember, it still sticks out in my mind to this day. Just it was kind of a fun, cheeky thing that they did for, I think it was Mafia 2. You could find old vintage Playboys. It was just like a funny thing they did, and it kind of fit with the world of the game to some degree, and it was just like it was sort of like just memorable to some degree, because I think it was like actual like vintage Playboy, so it was kind of like, oh, this is what it looked like. It was kind of cool. So I mean, it was a goofy thing, but at least the collectibles were somewhat interesting. It wasn't just, okay, here's a, I always pick on Assassin's Creed, but they made you find a whole bunch of feathers and like one of the games, and it was just like, this is the dumbest collectible I've ever seen. It's just like the most pointless collectible ever. I mean, if you're putting up collectibles in your game, don't feel like, don't just, that's my development advice, is don't just check a box. Don't just be like, okay, we got to have collectibles, throw in a bunch of random shit into the game and make people find it. Make it meaningful. Make it like,
well, I will say the collectibles in Hogwarts, they do, when you collect whatever pages or flying book or whatever, it does give you a lore of whatever area it was near. But I think the issue with that, and this may because for me, I did enjoy Harry Potter when I was younger. I read all the books, watched all the movies, but as I've gotten older, I've kind of outgrown it. And so it's kind of like, I don't care about the lore anymore. I'll tell you, I'm playing this entire game. I've skipped every cutscene and every dialogue that I could possibly skip. I don't.
That's another important point too. Neither of us are. Me much so less than even you. Neither of us are Harry Potter fans. We're not. I can't remember if I even saw the movies. Yeah. So it's we're definitely not like we are not the intended audience for this game.
If this game came out like maybe 15 years ago, I probably would have been all over it. I probably would have been like, oh man, I'm really want to learn more about the lore, and I'm really excited about this. This game is for me. But nowadays it's like, nope, don't care. I've been skipping everything. Friends of mine that have played it and beaten it said that they thought the story was okay, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't care. I'm not playing it for the story. It's kind of like how I've treated Destiny. I skip everything I can in Destiny to just get through the game and get through what I need to do in order to accomplish my task and move on. I just don't care. So that's my little tangent, our little tangent with regards to like open world games, Hogwarts Legacy, actually we didn't even start our tangent on open world games. Really, we were just dogging Hogwarts.
Well, we had to talk about Hogwarts, so it was arguably one of the biggest games of the year. So
yeah, I agree. Open world games. Okay, this is my tangent. I want to try to keep this short so we can move along. But you may agree with me on this. Every game feels like an open world game now. Every game. Agree or disagree?
More or less, yeah. A lot of big games are. It's kind of a design staple of our time in a lot of ways, where it pops up in a lot of games. I mean, a lot of the games we were just talking about too. Probably best encapsulated in some ways by even the first game we talked about, Dead Space. Dead Space, like I said, it started off as a very linear, level by level type of game. You would go to each part of the ship, you do what you had to do in that part of the ship, and then maybe you'd come back later for one other thing, like a different chapter, but it felt like a whole different level. And that was it. You didn't have to ever come back there again. Now it's the world of that game is an open world. You can go back to anywhere you want really in the game for the most of the game. And yeah, it seems like that's the direction that a lot of games are taking. Like everything has to be an open world to some extent. It feels like that's pretty much every other game this year, and not just even just this year. It's been a trend in gaming now for years now. I mean, look at every Sony first party exclusive game. Every one of them is open world at this point. Even God of War is open world now. It's definitely a trend, and not every game needs to. Not every game needs that necessarily. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think having open world games is necessarily bad. Some of my favorite games are very much open world and kind of free form like that. But it doesn't necessarily need to. There's nothing wrong with a linear experience either.
No, I would agree. And I remember you. I don't remember exactly what we were teasing each other for, but you had made a comment. You probably don't even remember this, but it was some time ago, and you made a comment to the effect of not every game has to be this big giant open world. I don't remember the context.
I think I do. I think we were arguing about Callisto.
Okay,
and we argued a lot about Callisto, and yeah. So because Callisto Protocol, of course, very. It doesn't really make the cut for this list because it came out last year, technically. But very obviously a linear game. There's a little bit of backtracking that's allowed in the game, but it's 95% a linear game.
Yeah. Okay. And you're right, because I actually criticized it for that. Because it was linear. This is for me. It was linear, and it wasn't even fun for me. And so if your game is linear and it's not fun... It's the same thing like an open world game, right? It's a Hogwarts Legacy. You have this big open world, nothing really enticing me to want to explore it. Or a linear game, you have this linear game, nothing really enticing me to want to continue to play through it. It's a really, really strict balance you have to have between the two. But I was thinking about that comment you had made to me, and I didn't really think about it. And then it's just like, man... He's got a point, and I hate to give you credits, but even a blind squirrel finds a nut on occasion. Right. But a lot of bigger games are just these open world experiences, and it really is becoming daunting because as technology advances, these open worlds are only going to become larger. And it's just, I don't know if I want to continue participating in something like that, And
I think it comes down to, I don't think either one is inherently bad. I think we can both give plenty of examples of, open world games that are fantastic, some of the best games ever made, and linear games that are fantastic, some of the best games that are ever made. I think what's key is... is understanding the type of game that you're... not even a balance, it's more so understanding the type of game you're trying to make. Like, for instance, like a Silent Hill, for example. Would Silent Hill have been better if it was open world and, the narrative was much less, and some parts of it are semi, open, but still, it is a very linear game, and it drives you through a story, and I think it would have been very different if you would have gotten the story beats of that game kind of out of order in a way. Like you could have gone to oh here, I'm going to go to this area first or this area first. I think some games are better kind of slowly feeding in that story in a very curated kind of way. Whereas other games, like for instance like Fallout, for example, I think that part of the joy of Fallout was the idea of being immersed in this this crazy post-apocalyptic world that you find your character in, and just exploring and going out, and that was what was so fun about like I said, from Fallout 3 onwards, is I could just pick a direction and I would find something interesting in every direction. And I would come across it, I'd stumble across it, and it was just, I'd find story, and it made it feel like a living kind of like a world,
But even games like that, like Fallout 3 and Skyrim, those open world games are significantly smaller than our modern open world games. And that's kind of my point, is like, I agree with you. A game like Fallout or Skyrim, you're kind of just out in the world and then you're just going. But those games were not big by any stretch of the imagination. And now if you play a game like Ragnarok or Tears of the Kingdom or Hogwarts Legacy, I mean, Fallout 3 or Skyrim would... I'd be hard-pressed to believe they'd even be a quarter of the size of those games. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is like, as technology advances, these big open worlds are only going to be bigger And then what's going to happen? Are they going to give us meaningful open world games like a God of War Ragnarok, like a Spider-Man? Or are we going to get shovelware shit like Hogwarts Legacy where they're just hitting the checklist and dumping it all in the game and saying, here you go, here's your big open world, enjoy.
Yeah, I can see what you're trying to say. Like, I mean, just because it's an open world, bigger is not always necessarily better.
Right.
It is, just because it's a big, huge open world doesn't mean that there's going to be meaningful things for you to do in it. And that's actually, kind of looking ahead to what we're going to talk about next. That's my fear with a game that's coming up pretty soon. Starfield. Yeah, which is arguably, at least it's presenting itself as the biggest game ever, 10,000 planets to visit, hugest game you could ever see, big league game, it's you can go everywhere and do everything, and
a gorillion planets you can go on.
Yeah, there's 6 gorillion planets you can go on, and the logical part of your brain, that sounds really okay. At first it's like, whoa, that sounds really cool, I can play this game forever, that's awesome. But then you're like, wait a minute. Okay, it still has to be made. This game isn't being made by an army of developers. There's not 2 million developers at Bethesda all making original content and packing it into this game. It's a large team of people that are working on it. But fundamentally, a game can only be so large before its budget just becomes completely crazy. You can only have so much handcrafted, curated content, which is that's the stuff we really remember about Skyrim and Oblivion and Fallout, is that really those well-written little stories, little vignettes. Those are the things we really care about. We don't care so much about the little procedurally generated, like little areas of a game. I mean, there might be some interesting things you come across if that has its place, but if all I'm getting is a game that's that has this giant, vast world for me to explore, worlds to explore, and it's just a whole bunch of procedurally generated crap that doesn't really have any real meaning or connection to the overall story or the game itself, then it feels kind of hollow. It feels kind of empty. And I guess it's fitting for a space game because space is mostly just empty nothingness. But it doesn't really. Yeah. It's supposed to be. It's not just a space game. It's a space video game. It's supposed to be entertaining. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of. I'm not worried that Starfield's not going to have a lot of fun, good quests and curated content for me to go through. But at the same time, I'm worried about. I'm not sure about it. I'm worried more so about we're going to have this huge, gigantic, all these different areas to explore. Like I can go to all these 10,000 different planets, but there's only going to be stuff to do on 5 of them. And then the rest of them are, it's like, okay, well, you can go over to Alpha Centauri or whatever, but it's just going to be a place where you can farm some crafting materials, and then maybe you'll see some then that's about it. There's nothing special to do there. There's not even a quest to do there. It's just a big bunch of nothingness, really. And I think if long story short, my opinion of the open world type of stuff is open worlds can be great. They can be really fun sandboxes to explore, but there has to be something in that sandbox, and it has to be kind of made. I think we're not at a point yet where an AI could really make a compelling quest. I don't think. So you can't just procedurally generate a fascinating universe yet. We're not at that point yet. Maybe we will be eventually, but we're not there yet. And you need to have things handcrafted by human hands, by human developers, to make interesting content for us to explore. And I don't want to have a big empty sandbox. There's nothing fun about a big empty sandbox.
Yeah, I think of Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain, when you mentioned a big empty sandbox, because that was another open world Metal Gear open world. And I think Starfield is going to have the same issue that Metal Gear Solid 5 had back in 2015. You're going to have these big, beautiful environments that you can run around in, play around in, nothing to do in them. And that's not fun. And I was one who I was very much in a honeymoon phase with Metal Gear Solid 5. I was just excited to have another Metal Gear game to play, and the mechanics of that game were super tight. The gunplay was fun. The cardboard box mechanics were as fun as ever with that. It really took a lot of the great qualities that Peace Walker had on PSP and put that onto a console experience. The online was pretty engaging. It was pretty entertaining. There's nothing more fun for me to go to another player's home base and steal his goats or his sheep for my base, and then they come and try to steal it back. It's just, stuff like that. It was fun. But overall, when you're playing the actual game itself, you have these big open worlds, but there was nothing to do in them. You know, you'd have your side quests, you'd have your main missions, and it was the same old generic shit that you had to do. Go to this base, kill these enemies, or capture this guy, or rescue this guy. Mission over. Okay, cool. Done. And I feel like that's what's going to happen in Starfield. I hope that people that are looking forward to this game and looking forward to playing this, I hope it lives up to your expectations. I hope you enjoy it. My experience with Microsoft first-party titles as of late has not been positive. I am done with Microsoft. I am done supporting them in any capacity. Once my Game Pass membership expires, I'm done. I'm not renewing anything, and I may even just hawk off my Series X because I don't need it.
To be fair, I think there's a little bit more nuance to this one because Starfield's been in development for a long time. It predates the Bethesda acquisition, and this has been it's been in development for years. And yes, you're right that it could be a case where there could be a lot of Microsoft meddling into it. But at the same time, this wasn't something that was just purely them.
You still have Todd Howard to worry about. Let's be honest. You still have Todd Howard to
don't believe his lies.
I'm just saying, like.
No,
you know?
Todd Howard gets.
And you know what?
Todd Howard gets a lot of flack. I think he's kind of almost like a Peter Molyneux figure was, if you remember how he was sort of like always treated as like this kind of like, you know, he was always promising the world through us, and we didn't really get that with Fable.
But now now where's Peter Molyneux? He's done.
He's gone.
He's gone.
The difference, though, Yeah. Well, actually, I guess he is coming back actually and doing stuff now.
Oh.
But no, Todd Howard's a little bit different. I think if I met Todd Howard in real life, I would shake his hand, and then I'd appreciate the great experiences he's put out. You gotta take with the good and the bad with what he's done.
Yeah, I'm not hating on the guy. I'm just saying, like, the guy does have a reputation, and you can't ignore that. Now Microsoft is going to have a reputation, and I don't know. When we watched the showcase of it, and we didn't even watch it in its entirety. I think we just watched snippets of it. Nothing really wowed me about it. Nothing really got me to say, oh my gosh, this is going to be the killer app. And Bethesda is already mired in controversy this year because of that Redfall game. And I don't see this being the killer app for the Series X. And I really, I hope I'm wrong for the sake of other players who are looking forward to it. I don't want people to shit on it, or I don't want people to take my word as gospel and then completely ignore it because of what I'm saying. I'm a fucking nobody. But I think people are going to be disappointed. I don't think it's going to be all that it's cracked up to be. And I think it's going to end up like another No Man's Sky. It's going to have a lot of issues. Todd Howard is the only one that's allowed to publicly talk about the game right now. And it comes out in, 2 months?
Yeah, September. It's coming up quick.
That doesn't bode well for me, man. Like, you think about, I know they're not exactly the same, but like, I remember Dead Space Remake, everybody involved with that project, they had like vignettes of what they were doing on the game, and they were releasing those quite often of what they were doing with the game and how it's coming along. And Todd Howard is the only guy that's allowed to publicly talk about this big killer app that's coming out on Xbox. I don't know, man. It seems like they're trying to keep it close to their chest, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're gonna have what do you call it, where they can't review it until it's released. Embargo, yeah. They're going to do the I'll bet you they're going to do an embargo similar to what happened with Cyberpunk. And we all know how that went down.
Yeah, for me there's two reasons to be somewhat optimistic about it. And first and foremost, I think they have a lot riding on this game. I think they want this game to be a huge success. They've had a lot of stinkers lately, and this is a game that they've invested a lot of time and money and marketing and hype into. And obviously it's something they want to they want this to be a new IP for them. They want this to be something that isn't just a one-time hit. They want this to be something that they can sell DLC for. Hey, maybe even a sequel, 5, 6, 7 years down the road. This is something they've invested a lot in this world. This is their first for Bethesda. This is their first new IP in 25 some years, their first new world or franchise that they've made. So they've had a lot invested into this. And yeah, maybe things are a little bit different now that Microsoft is their kind of the new overlords now. But I know from the start, this wasn't just like a whim for them. This is something that they've really have invested a lot of energy and resources into. And secondly, kind of from a cynical standpoint, yeah, maybe the game comes out, maybe it's not what we all hope it's going to be, maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be. Inevitably, what happens with all Bethesda games is there is a very active mod community for these games. So I'm hoping that that will be, maybe they'll kind of fill the gaps to some degree. I don't really have anything else coming out in September that I'm looking forward to. So, or really not much for the rest of the year after Starfield. So in a way, it's kind of my last hurrah for the year, and I'm kind of looking for like a big game like that to play. So, it'll kind of tide me over for a while. So, I mean, we'll see how good or bad it is. I mean, worst case scenario, if I have to do like a refund on it, I'll refund it. But I want to give this game a fair shake, and I'm not expecting it to be like to blow my socks off or anything like that. If anything, everything I've seen so far has been really a mixed bag on it, and yeah, I want it to be successful though. I'm not hating on this game by any stretch of the imagination. I want it to be successful, but I think there's plenty of reasons to think that it won't be, and also some reasons to be maybe a little bit optimistic about it.
Yeah, and that's kind of like where I'm coming from too. Just to be clear, I'm not hating on it entirely. Just because I say I'm not impressed with it doesn't mean I'm hating on it. But there are definitely elephants in the room with regards to Microsoft and their business dealings as of late, where it's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know if this is going to be it. I wouldn't be confident in this, and that's kind of where I stand on it. I hope you enjoy it. We'll definitely we'll have to tune in with you when you play it. Are you getting your Constellation edition where you can get your Starfield Chronomark watch?
No, I didn't go that
your
crazy
watch
with
case?
it. No, I got the what's called the premium edition, and I got that at a discount too. It was at a sale. So I got the premium edition. I got that for pretty much the same price as the base game. So I got the premium edition with the extra DLC and content for roughly a little bit more than the same price as the base game. So
okay.
So that's I didn't really I saw the watch and stuff, and I'm like, maybe I'm not really a watch guy. So I was like, whatever. It maybe if it was like a watch for like a franchise I really cared about, but this is a new IP. We don't really know what to think about it yet.
Right. All right. Well, moving right along here.
We kind of got into like some games that are coming out already. I kind of launched into a Starfield thing there.
Well, why don't you list off whatever else you're looking forward to? I got quite a few games that I'm looking forward to still. So
well, really quickly before we do that, let's talk about old business before we get to the new business here. So
okay,
just a couple of things to really quickly go through, and I won't spend much time on these at all. Just want to make some notes here for the year, because like I said, this is a jam-packed year, and we could easily make this like a 4-hour podcast if we really wanted to, if not longer. But a couple of quick things to go through. We already talked about Callisto Protocol very briefly. Callisto Protocol did have really all of its DLC come out this year.
That's right. Go ahead, talk about it.
Yeah, if you want to know my kind of my deep thoughts on the story DLC and really the game in general, I encourage you to go and watch my playthroughs. I did a hardcore playthrough of the main game. I also did a highest difficulty playthrough of the DLC as well too, and I've spent a lot of time on those. So if you really want my deep thoughts on those, go for those. I will say, as a fan of the original game, warts and all, I like it more than than the bad things about it would detract from it. I was really disappointed in the DLC overall. I think the story DLC is adequate. It's okay. It didn't blow me away or anything, but I think the rest of the DLC in the package really was not worth it. It was just a couple of like skins, couple of reskins, couple of extra modes that didn't really add much to the game at all. So yeah, the season pass was kind of a bust for it. You could probably skip the season pass, just get the story DLC if you're really into the main game. That's my really quick thoughts on Callisto Protocol. But if you really want to know more, go watch my videos on it, and I do a full playthrough on those. I talk about it as I go through the games. Went over that. Ghostwire Tokyo, that was a game that came out last year, and we had a huge free DLC update to coincide with the Xbox release of the game. It started off as a PlayStation 5/PC exclusive, and then it came to Xbox this year. And when it came to Xbox, there's a huge free DLC update that we got on the PC and PS5 versions. And it was surprisingly okay. Keep in mind, it's free content. It was a whole bunch of extra free stuff they added to the game for nothing. So it adds a roguelite mode to the game where you can kind of go for like a waves of challenges, and it kind of like it changes each time. It's kind of randomized to some degree. That was actually kind of somewhat enjoyable to do. It adds definitely to the life of the game. Probably the standout for me was they added on like a side mission, like a couple side missions. There's like, what do you do inside of a school? That's actually kind of creepy. It kind of adds to the. I think when we were originally looking at Ghostwire Tokyo, we thought it was going to be more of a horror game, and the school level is definitely more survival horror themed. There's some really kind of like good genuine moments in there that kind of work out really well. You're going for like this Japanese like high school or grade school, and there's like spooky stuff happening, and things like chase you and follow you at some point. So that was actually really well done. And like I said, it's free. I mean, you can't really complain about it. It's free content for an okay game. So yes, that's my thoughts on Ghostwire Tokyo. Free DLC. I'd say if you can find that game for under $15-$20, it's probably worth a playthrough. It's it's just a gorgeous world to play through. It's a lot of collectibles to go for. I know we just talked about collectibles, a ton of collectibles. You think Hogwarts is bad? Oh my god. Play Ghostwire Tokyo. It is just there's a collectible every 5 feet.
Oh boy.
But it's all very optional and doesn't really mean anything. It's just
I know
all
collectibles are optional. I get that, but it's just like, do we need hundreds of them in every game?
It's obnoxious in that game. Trust me. Go watch like a collectible video of that game. It is obnoxious how much shit there is to do in that game.
Yeah.
But you get your time, your money's worth out of it, I guess, right?
I suppose.
Last game I want to talk about. This one I'm really passionate about, and I really enjoy this. I encourage everybody to play this game. Warhammer 40K Bolt Gun. Fantastic game. It is I guess you could say it's in this new kind of subgenre of shooters called, they call them boomer shooters now, which is basically just these kind of throwback games. It's very much done in the style of like Doom 2 and kind of older games, or maybe like Quake elements to it, or Unreal Tournament kind of elements to it, where it's kind of this arena shooter, and it is just a blast. It's fun to go through. It's a cheapy little game. It's like this little kind of indie side game. That I think I got it for like $16. So it's a cheap little game. It actually has a good amount of like hours to it if you go for all the levels. It's actually, what was my time for that game here? Let's see, Warhammer Bolt Gun. I put 30 hours into it. About 30. I mean, there's some idle time there, so maybe about 20 hours I put into the game. So that's pretty good for a $16 game. There's some full price games that don't get 20 hours.
Sure.
Of gameplay out of it, but it's a lot of fun. It's a type of game that doesn't really get made too much anymore, aside from these like throwback games. It's not about these hit scan weapons. It's about running around, going around in a big circle in an arena and kind of like improvising during a fight, and you're surrounded and overwhelmed by a ton of enemies coming at you from all directions, and you have to kind of run around and just improvise and do whatever you can, use all these different weapons to survive. And it's a great game. It's done with a Warhammer coat of paint, which is fantastic for me as a Warhammer fan. I guess you could say I'm kind of an above average Warhammer fan. If you have like your crazy zealots over here that play the game and play the tabletop game and know everything there is to know about it, and you have your new people over here that don't even know what's a Warhammer.
Right. I'm
probably somewhere in the middle, maybe a little bit more towards the crazy side. I read the books, I love the universe, so that's an automatic +1. So if this was I'd say this was like a 7 or 8 out of 10. kind of game to me. So it's really, for me, it's more so like an 8 or a 9 out of 10 because it's just because of the Warhammer coat of paint. So fantastic game. Like I said, for $16, you can't go wrong. Really encourage you to go for it. It's not perfect. I'm not trying to make it out as like a masterpiece, but it was probably just the most like raw fun I had this year for a game. Just pure fun. There's not really a story to it. It's just you're a space marine and you're killing chaos space marines and chaos demons, and that's the story. And you don't really have to know anything about Warhammer to appreciate it. It's just a lot of fun. And the weapon variety is pretty decent too. My only criticism of the game is I wish it was a little bit more difficult. It's actually really, really easy for the most part, and that's even playing on the highest difficulty. Play on the highest difficulty if you're going to play it, because it is going to be just a cakewalk for you unless this is like your first FPS. So, but yeah, I encourage everybody to try it out. I think it's on like every system, so definitely check it out. But yeah, that's kind of my wrap up thoughts for some of the other stuff that came out this year.
Okay, right on. So moving right along, let's get to what's to come for this year. And don't mind what I'm pulling up on my screens. I'm just pulling up various things that are just kind of tracking my attention. I didn't realize Baldur's Gate 3 comes out next week already. And
yeah, I haven't really been thinking about that. It's been I know there's been a lot of like forum threads about it and stuff like that, people talking about it. It's been in early access on Steam for like over like a year now, it feels like, so I feel like it's kind of already been out in a way.
Have you tried it at all, or are you a fan of Baldur's Gate?
I haven't tried it out. I am not a Dungeons and Dragons person.
Okay.
I did go see the new movie and actually kind of enjoyed it for what it was, but I don't think you really need to be a Dungeons and Dragons fan to actually enjoy that movie.
Sure.
I've never actually played the actual, role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. I haven't really played any of the video games, so I'm not a Dungeons and Dragons fan. I have nothing against the franchise and this, but and the IP. I'm not necessarily the target audience for it. I do have it on my wish list though, as something I will probably pick up and check out, just because it looks so well done. It's very, just graphically and how big it's going to be and kind of the level of detail that's going to be put into it. It looks like it is a pretty cool experience. So I probably will be checking it out.
Yeah, I'm intrigued with it. I'm trying to remember which ones came out on PS2. Was that the Dark Alliance games, or was that Baldur's Gate 1 and 2?
Let's see.
Because whichever one came out on PS2, I was a big fan of that one. But I can't remember for the. I want to say it was Dark Alliance.
Yeah, I mean it's been. Technically, if we're going by like mainline games, Baldur's Gate 2 came out like in 2000, so it's been a while since we had like a.
It was Dark Alliance. That's what I played. That was on PlayStation 2. So yeah. that one I had a lot of fun with, and this
it's been kind of a dormant series to some degree.
So I didn't even have this on my list originally. This is not going to be a day one buy for me though. This is just not going to bode well in terms of what I'm trying to wrap up and finish up here. Plus what I have coming out in the coming months.
And you're not like a Dungeons and Dragons guy.
No, I'm not. I did enjoy the Dark Alliance games on PlayStation 2. I don't know anything about the lore, but I am fascinated by this game. It looks to be a gorgeous looking game. Tons of different character interaction that can occur, different dialogue options. This will probably be a game I get like next summer during next summer's video game drought, if there isn't anything crazy that I care about, that comes out in 2024. But yeah, so we've got Baldur's Gate 3 coming out next week, and then you got something coming out in August that you're very much looking forward to.
Yeah, it was a game that had been rumored for years and years, and we finally got confirmation of it. And it's hard to believe it's actually coming out now, and it's less than a month away now. We have of course the glorious return of Armored Core with Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. And yeah, I'm pretty hyped up for it. I'm really looking forward to it. I've watched all the gameplay videos of it so far. I've watched the walkthrough of it, and I'm excited to get back into it. I'm a once again, I'm not like a super hardcore fan of Armored Core. I got into Armored Core in the PlayStation 2 era, which was kind of the second generation of Armored Core. Loved it, played it all throughout the PlayStation 2, all the way up until Last Raven, which was the last game that came out. There's like 6 or 7 games that came out on PS2 for Armored Core. And then we had Armored Core 4 came out on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Played Armored Core 4. I wasn't like gaga over it. I wasn't crazy about it. It was okay. And then I just kind of fell off from the series after that point, which is unfortunate because my understanding is Armored Core 4 Answer was actually pretty okay. So it's kind of unfortunate I didn't really get into that. I almost got back into it with Armored Core 5, but the Armored Core 5 had this big multiplayer focus, which I didn't really care for. And same with Verdict Day, I didn't really see like a need to get back into that. But I've always been a huge fan of the series. You know, I've really enjoyed it. Like I said, the PS2, I still have my old PlayStation 2 games that I played when I was a kid, and I just had a ton of fun with it. And I'm kind of in a unique camp here because I am not a Souls fan at all, really. I'm not really into the Dark Souls series. I don't really have anything like strongly against them, but I'm not a fan of them in general. I've tried a couple of them, never really got into them. But I very much love Armored Core. I think what works about Armored Core, if I were to make a comparison between Armored Core and the Souls game, is I think the assembly part of Armored Core is actually really fun and really appealing, whereas like the RPG elements of like the Souls games always felt like a chore to me. It doesn't feel like they're implemented well. And you know, for me, I like the idea of building a mech, and that's kind of like that's sort of like a game. You can almost make a whole game just off the assembly of your mech in itself. And I'm looking forward to that. And I know there's going to be some changes for this game, and they're altering a few things around, but that's kind of okay too. There's been changes in Armored Core since the very beginning. You know, even in Armored Core 2, they added different things on, like overboosts and exceed orbit weapons and the ability to drop weapons and stuff like that. That change has been part of the series really every generation in every game, so that's not like outlandish to me or anything like that. It still looks like an Armored Core game through and through. There's still a huge focus on assembly and building a perfect Armored Core. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I have we're gonna have a fun unboxing to do for it. I have the crazy collector's edition for it that's gonna be like ridiculously big. So that's gonna be fun for us to do it. We're gonna do an unboxing video of that. I have, I'm kind of like, I kind of went into this sort of like you went into Tears of the Kingdom. Like I got the pre-order bonus, like, from, there's a keychain pre-order bonus. I made sure I got that. I just want to get everything related to this game that I can. There's been some reprints of figures that they've made, like different Armored Cores from like past games. I have those ordered too as well. So I'm everything Armored Core related. I'm all over now. I'm really excited to get back into the series and play it again. And yeah, I mean it's probably my most anticipated game by far.
And I was checking out the gameplay as you were talking about it. It looks astonishing. I don't think this will be a day one purchase for me, simply because there are other games coming out this year that I want to take precedence. But I think I will eventually pick this up. I was going to get the big Rubicon edition that you were referencing, but I'm more of the Soulsborne guy when it comes to FromSoft games. I'm not the Armored Core guy, so it just really doesn't make sense for me to pick up that big collector's edition. But speaking of Soulsborne games, this is a good segue because it's not From Software. It's not From Software. As redundant as that sounds, but there's you there, yeah. It's a Lies of P. It's called Lies of P, and it's a Soulsborne style game set within the universe of Pinocchio. And I did play the demo of that. That comes out in September, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I played the demo and I loved it. It's exactly like a Soulsborne game to the T, but you're playing in the world of Pinocchio, and it's a darker take on Pinocchio, and I really appreciate that because you don't really see a lot of those classic childhood stories with darker takes on them. The last one we had to my recollection, was the Alice games, specifically Alice Madness Returns on Xbox 360, which came out, what, a decade ago now?
Yeah, and American McGee, who's behind the Alice games and some other kind of dark fairy tale takes, is effectively retired, from my understanding. So, yeah, it's good to see something like this. I mean, it's a lot of children's stories. Actually have a lot of kind of darker undercurrents and themes to them in a lot of ways too. We had a very different the modern concept of a children's story is something that's very very much cutesy and Elmo and stuff like that, but it's that wasn't always the perception of a children's story. And I played the demo as well too for this. I thought it was actually, I did, yeah. No, I thought I told you about that. No,
I didn't know that. Okay, so what'd you think?
I really enjoyed it. I thought graphically it looks fantastic. I think the world it's in is interesting, and that's more than I could say for, like I said, for Dark Souls and Elden Ring. The world for those games did not really grip me at all, whereas this game is actually, I kind of want to learn more about the world and its characters.
Okay.
I can't say I was like nuts about like the combat and everything. I kind of like I kind of got like into it more as I played it, and I kind of I restarted the demo and kind of like changed my playstyle a little bit, and it became a lot easier. But I think the game doesn't really like kind of present like the core concepts of it really well, and you have to kind of like sort of feel it out to some degree. Sure. And maybe some people like that, like they like not the non-hand holding aspect of it, but
that's usually how it is. Just with Soulsborne games in general, it really is like a, for lack of a better term, a guess and check method in terms of how you should handle combat and how it'll work for you as a player. But
I think my main criticism of the game is maybe this is just because it was a demo, but the technical performance of it was a little off. I actually, because I noticed that my timing for like a lot, like, because like I said, it's a Soulsborne game, so a lot of it is very much about parrying and dodging at the perfect time.
Yes.
I noticed that my timing felt really off, and I looked on the forums on Steam, and sure enough, people were saying right away, change your FPS, change your frame rate, because it's going to feel really off if you don't have your frame rate set to, I think it was like you have to, I don't know if it was 60 FPS or whatever, you had to kind of like lower your frame rate to some degree, and then all of a sudden, boom, everything felt like, okay, I'm parrying at the right time now, everything feels natural. So, so a little performance issue aside, but an important one because it affected the gameplay a lot.
Sure.
It was it was a difference between parrying and not parrying, or dodging and not dodging. So
right.
It mattered. But I could see myself getting into this game eventually. Like I said, in general, I'm not a big fan of like the Soulsborne games, but if this game, it's not a day one buy for me, but I could see myself picking it up if it goes like maybe under $30 or under $20 or something like that. I could see myself grabbing it.
Very good. All right, and then let's see what else. Well, this one is. I don't want to say mired
There's
in
still
controversy.
A lot coming. It's kind of hard to believe. Like, I mean, we talked about a lot that came, we didn't really even give even close to an exhaustive list. There's a lot of other games we didn't even mention. We didn't mention Star Wars, for example.
Oh yeah. We tried to keep it to things we only played.
Yeah. I mean, this was such a packed year.
The Metal Gear Solid Master Collection. Now I know you're not a big Metal Gear guy. But I am definitely the Metal Gear guy of the channel. And this one, a lot of unique stuff with it. We've gotten a lot of, additional details as time goes on in terms of what comes in the package and what you're getting with it. First, I want to say, Konami, kudos to you for giving this a physical release. I'm very happy that this is getting a physical release. I like physical games still. I know you and I slightly differ on that, but I like having something to show for what I own. And if it's...
I like physical games too, don't get me wrong.
No, I know you do. I'm just talking about like modern games. You've completely embraced PC, and nothing wrong with that. But that's kind of what keeps me on consoles, is being able to buy the physical copies. But with this, you get a lot in this. A lot of people were are not happy about the $60 price point, but in looking at what you get in the package, you get the 3 Metal Gear Solid games. So you get MGS1, Sons of Liberty, and Snake Eater. Then you also get Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, which were only on the MSX consoles back in the late 80s, early 90s, something like that. You also get the god-awful Nintendo version of Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear 2 Snake's Revenge, which I don't know why you'd want to play those, but hey, you'll get them. And then you get digital soundtrack, you get digital strategy guides, and you get digital graphic novels. So you get quite a bit in the collection itself. What I'm curious about, though, and I've tried looking and I can't find anything about this, is about a year or so ago, Metal Gear Solid HD Collection were pulled off of digital storefronts between Steam, Xbox, and PlayStation. And the reason why they were pulled is because it was either Snake Eater, Sons of Liberty, or both. They had archived footage within their cutscenes where the rights to that footage expired for Konami. So they pulled them from the storefronts. It's never been verified, at least as far as I could find, if they renewed those licenses for those cutscenes or what actually happened with that. And now I'm curious with this Master Collection, are these games going to be the original games in their entirety? Or is there going to be, missing footage or reworked footage somehow? And it's going to be really interesting because a lot of those cutscenes with that archived footage from real life situations, there is important dialogue happening there. So I'm really curious, what Konami did, if they just renewed the license or what kind of rework did they do? Did they pull those scenes out entirely and now you're going to be missing chunks of storyline for Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3? I couldn't find
Well,
anything.
I think if we go by Konami's track record, not to knock on Konami, but it is usually when there's a choice between, preserving the original content and taking the cheap way out, it's usually the cheap way out. So, it's just been the case. I'm really jaded about a lot of their remakes and stuff mostly because of Silent Hill's awful HD remaster. Those are probably arguably
it's 10 years ago, man. You got to move on.
No, I'll never forget it. I will never forget. Never again. But yeah, no, it is. To answer your question, I think it's probably going to be something where they just, maybe they put something else there for those scenes, or who knows? Maybe they do have the rights to it. I don't know, but I'd imagine whatever the easier, cheaper option is what they're going to do.
I if this were 5 years ago, I'd be inclined to agree with you. But I know leadership has changed within Konami, and Konami is kind of revitalizing their franchises. And so at this point, it's hard to say. I mean, the proof will be in the pudding. I don't know if I'll play the Master Collection at all when it first drops. I'm going to buy it to have part of my personal collection anyway. I don't know if I'll open it up and play it right away. It'll depend on where I'm at with other games that I actually want to play. But it will be interesting, to say the least. I can't imagine them cutting entire scenes out, or even putting money into R&D to rework a cutscene. I don't know. It makes me wonder, maybe the cheap route would have been to renew the license. I don't even know how much something like that would cost. Maybe that is the cheaper route. Maybe they thought about that and ultimately decided. We'll find out. I haven't played Metal Gear Solid HD Collection in quite some time. I do want to get back to it. I own those games on disc, so whatever they did won't impact me because I have the disc versions in their original form, so they can't edit out my video game. And I even have the original PlayStation 2 versions as well.
So yeah, well, actually for that collection in particular, I might because it looks like Steam is actually going to give the option to purchase the games a la carte.
Yes, you can purchase them separately too. Yes.
Yeah. So I might actually, I do have some nostalgia for the original Metal Gear Solid, so I might actually pick up just that one and play through that one again, just for nostalgic purposes. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the series by any stretch of the imagination. I do think the original Metal Gear Solid though was kind of okay. I don't think it was like a masterpiece like people make it out to be. Like it's this 10 out of 10 blows your mind type of thing. But I thought it was fun. I think I like some of the goofy humor of it, and
some cool fourth wall breaking moments in it too. The Metal Gear Solid,
there's some fun. Like I said, if I was to make a video game, I would like I think I don't want to get off on a rant about Kojima, but I think Kojima is kind of like the George Lucas of video games, where if he has some great ideas, and if he has enough people around him kind of directing and channeling him and kind of saying no to some things, some of the crazier stuff, then I think it would be great. But if you leave him on your own, then you get Phantom Menace,
so he used to have people like that. He had Tomokazu Fukushima. That was the guy who kind of, I suspect, this isn't confirmed, but I suspect that Fukushima was that guy who had a leash on him. So Metal Gear Solid 1 through 3, Fukushima was a writer alongside Kojima and Murata. And then Metal Gear Solid 4, Fukushima is no longer in the picture, and that's where you really see things spiral out of control from there on. But yeah, so we got that. The Metal Gear Solid Master Collection version does include the VR and special missions as well. So you get the complete package nice. From PlayStation 1. Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty and Snake Eater, those are the HD collection versions. So Metal Gear Solid 2 had its own VR mode with Substance on PS2, and that was the version you got in the HD collection. Snake Eater HD collection, while it didn't have any like VR missions or anything like that, it did have a fun theater mode where you could alter the cutscenes slightly, have a little bit more fun with it. So it had a couple of bonuses, but nothing in terms of like VR or special missions. Let's see, what else? The next one I want to go into is Spider-Man 2. And tomorrow, as a matter of fact, you can get this bad boy. Now, I don't think you can see what's on my screen right now, but it's the...
I know what you're talking about, though. Yeah,
it's the Spider-Man 2 PlayStation 5 console and the Spider-Man 2 PlayStation 5 DualSense controller. These things look pretty cool. And I gotta say, Sony did something right here, where you do not have to get the Spider-Man PlayStation 5 console if you want the console plates. They will be selling the console plates separately. So if you're like me and already have a PlayStation 5, cool. I don't have to drop another $550 for a PS5. I can just pay $50 to get the Spider-Man 2 console plates, and I'll be good to go.
Credit where credit's due. I'm not a no one would accuse me of being a Sony fan really anymore, but I mean, credit where credit's due. That is pretty pro consumer. That is pretty nice for, I remember back in the day, a lot of pretty much all these like custom systems you have to just buy them outright. There's no way to like really only like Xbox 360 really had the whole like switchable faceplate idea behind it.
But that was just the faceplate even. It wasn't
that was just the faceplate too. Yeah. But this is a lot more, I think, consumer friendly for people that want to have like a nice custom system and they want to have something official, and they don't want to shell out another $500 or $600 for a whole brand new system.
Which boggles my mind. So they did this for Spider-Man, but they did not do this for Ragnarok. Which is really away, man. I would have been all over Ragnarok console plates,
and there was precedent for this too, because we had a God of War. I know it was just a red system; it wasn't anything special about, but we had a God of War PS3. We've had God of War PSPs.
God of War PS4.
God of War PS4, of course, a really kind of cool and special looking one. And then Ragnarok comes out, and
nothing. You got a
Yeah.
controller. They did do a special DualSense controller.
Yeah, special controller, which is that's nice.
It was a nice looking controller, but it's like, man, dude, would I have loved a Ragnarok console plates for my PlayStation 5? I don't know why they didn't do that, man. Maybe I have no idea. Somebody dropped the ball in that pitch meeting. I cannot imagine, because God of War Ragnarok sold really well when it first launched. It reviewed really well. Of course it was going to, no matter what. I mean, the premise of the game could have been, Kratos chasing after giant turd, and it would have reviewed well. But it just, yeah. But kudos to Sony. I'm very happy with Sony on this. It looks like the console plates, those are going to retail for $65, and the DualSense controller is going to retail for $80. So if you're me and you're going to get those, you're going to be dropping after tax like $160. The bundle itself looks like it's going to be $600. Man, are they increasing the prices on this stuff? Like,
that seems higher. Yeah, well, I guess it kind of makes sense. It does. The bundle does come with the game, right?
It comes with the game. Oh, the bundle comes with the game and the controller.
Oh, okay. So
that
kind of makes more sense, because it's a special system and a special controller and a game.
Yeah,
so, yeah. And
I didn't realize the console also came with the controller. Okay,
is it deluxe, like a deluxe version of the game with DLC too, or something like that, or?
It is the. Let's see here. You get the pre-order bonuses for the game. You don't get the collector's edition content for the game, though. So the collector's edition is going to have additional costumes. So, yeah, you get the pre-order.
Okay,
you get If you get the console bundle, you get the pre-order suits. So you get a unique costume for Peter and Miles Morales. You get the controller. You get the unique PlayStation 5, but you don't get the extra skill points. You don't get the additional suits on top of the pre-order bonus ones. This collector's edition is one I'm really looking forward to. I'm really looking forward to the unboxing of that. It's a very prominent statue of Venom with Spider-Man and Miles Morales attacking Venom, or trying to attack him at least. Looks beautiful. This is gonna be.
I know you're such a Spider-Man fan, to be honest with you.
I'm a big fan. I loved the animated Spider-Man series when I was a kid, the one from the 90s. And the comics of that era were really good. The movies, the Spider-Man 1 and 2 from Sam Raimi were very good Spider-Man movies and superhero movies. I also am a fan of the Andrew Garfield movies. I think those get a lot of flack for no reason. And I don't mind the Tom Holland Spider-Man either. All in all, Spider-Man on the big screen has been handled with care, at least from the live action perspective. I don't really care about Miles Morales. Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Don't at me for that. Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Nobody else is. And I'm a huge fan of Venom. He's probably one of my favorite villains in the superhero space. Well, he's tied with Joker from Batman, but different entities. So, yeah, and what else do we got here? These are ones that I can kind of just gloss over. Pikmin 1 and 2, I already talked about getting those. Super Mario Bros. Wonder, we're getting a new 2D Mario game on the Switch. A lot of people were asking for that. It looked pretty cool, and I'll be picking that up. Super Mario RPG, that looks awesome. I'm looking forward to that. That'll be cool. And Alan Wake 2. Were you a fan of Alan Wake?
Not really. I didn't really ever get all the way through it, no.
Okay. Alan Wake 1 I thought was pretty decent. I did play the remastered version. I enjoyed it. Alan Wake 2 is digital only. And it's a shame because the game itself looks pretty good. but this is a game I probably won't ever buy because it's digital only.
Yeah, it's worse for me. It's digital only. I think it's an Epic Store exclusive, so I'm not interested at all. So any interest I would have had into it, if it's Epic Store exclusive, no thanks.
Yeah. So that pretty much rounds out the year for me. How about yourself? I know your list, I don't think is as substantial as mine, so I didn't mean to take over on you, but
well, you did. No. I got a few of mine in there too. I talked about Starfield. I talked about Armored Core 6, which is, like I said, by far my most anticipated game without question, and the others are not even close to that. There is at least one other game I want to mention that I'm looking forward to that is supposed to be coming out in 2023. Two more games. One of them is very minor, though. So the game I'm thinking of, though, is Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2. I already mentioned just a little bit earlier, I'm a Warhammer fan. I love the universe. I love the lore of it. I love a lot about it. And I enjoyed Space Marine. That's an older game now. It's like 10 years old at least now. It came out like back in like 2012, 2013 or something like that. So it's an older game now. It's not something we ever really expected to get like a follow-up to. But it wasn't like, it didn't blow your mind. There's not like many Warhammer games that really are like, 10 out of 10 quality or anything like that. But it was fun, and like I said, for fans of the lore and of the universe itself, it is an interesting setting, so that always kind of draws you in. So yeah, I'm curious to see what they do with this one. I do have a nice unboxing to do. I got the collector's edition for it. So that's something we can look forward to on the channel. We will do an unboxing for that when it comes out. Presumably it's 2023. We have not gotten a confirmation on the exact date for 2023. If there is a possibility it might be pushed back. That's that could happen. But for now they keep saying it's 2023, so we're going to assume it's 2023. Okay. And yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that. I haven't really heard if there's going to be like any kind of multiplayer in it. The original had multiplayer. I don't know if there's going to be multiplayer for this one or not. And yeah, no, it looks pretty cool. It's you're playing as an Ultramarine. It looks like you're going to be fighting off against I think it was mostly Tyranids, but I'm sure Chaos will show up again. It's kind of they're kind of the go-to enemy in Warhammer, and that's okay with me. I love Chaos. I used to play Chaos Space Marines, and I'm fascinated by their lore. I just wish we'd have more things from that's my criticism of a lot of Warhammer. It's my criticism of Bolt Gun too, because Bolt Gun, guess what else you're playing as? You're playing as an Ultramarine, because you always play as an Ultramarine. it's always the good guys, and it's always the Ultramarines. Yeah. But the quote unquote good guys. And I would like to see something from a Chaos perspective. I think that's it's a fascinating kind of. I'm actually reading for a book right now called The Lords of Silence in the Warhammer universe, and it's from a Chaos perspective, and it's fascinating. They're very kind of nuanced characters in a lot of ways. It makes for an interesting read as compared to just your vanilla Warhammer stuff. So I like to see a game from a Chaos perspective. So if we do get a Space Marines, I hope this game does well. I hope this game is good. It looks like it's going to be pretty good from what I've seen of the gameplay trailer so far. So I'm hoping if we get a Space Marine 3 down the road, that is from maybe we play as like a Black Legion and run a crusade or something like that. So that'd be kind of cool. So I'm gaga over everything Warhammer, but yeah, I'll be looking forward to that. We'll have a cool unboxing for that as well too. Cool. Last game I'll mention is we are getting it's kind of weird. I want to call it like a reimagining. We were talking about this earlier, actually, before this. Lords of the Fallen. We call it a reimagining? Do we call it a do-over? Do we call it a remaster? It's almost like just like a straight do-over. It looks like I played for Lords of the Fallen. I picked it up actually this year. Played for it this year. It was like $4 on Steam for the whole game and for the DLC. So I'm like, what the hell? Why not? You can't go wrong for $4. That's what you would pay for, back in the old days of renting something from a video store. So how can you go wrong with that, right? Right. So I got the game. I actually played through it. I kind of enjoyed it. I actually think it did some things better than like the Souls games that inspired it. I like the kind of the greed, risk versus reward system of the experience, where the longer you go without healing or without hitting a checkpoint, the more experience you gain. So it kind of encourages you to really kind of push yourself to the limit, but also at the same time you can kind of like it can kind of bite you in the ass as well too if you're too greedy and you kind of bite off more than you can chew. And I like that element of it. I think some of it was actually pretty fun. I think the story of it was completely forgettable. It's completely phoned in. It's the most bare bones, basic fantasy plot you could possibly imagine. We got to go kill God. It feels like an old JRPG. That's like what you did in every old JRPG. We got to go kill God. and there's a twist at the end, and then so. Yeah, this
you
new
were God the whole time.
No, it was like God was like the evil God was actually not evil, and the person you were working for was evil. Oh my God! One of those again. So, but yeah, this we just watched the gameplay for this new version, this new reimagining, I'll call it, that's coming out this year. I think in October, and it looks okay. It looks like it looks like a pretty decent Soulsborne style game, and it looks like there's very little that's referencing back to the original, other than just like a few names and maybe the general art style you could say is kind of referencing back to the original. But it's one I will probably pick up when it's on a deep discount. It's on my Steam wish list, and it'll probably be one of those that just sits there for a while until it gets down to like its predecessor, where it was like down to like $5. Maybe then I'll pick it up. But it's worth looking into if you're someone that's like looking for like you're a Soulsborne nut and you play everything. Then you got some stuff to feed on this year. You got Lies of P, and then you got this Lords of the Fallen as well too. So you got it, and then you had Star Wars as well, which is kind of Soulsborne-esque. So I mean, you had some games this year, and then you had Elden Ring last year. So there's no shortage of Soulsborne style games.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's those are the big ones I can think of that are coming out. There's stuff coming out in 2024 and beyond that we're looking forward to. But I think that's going to be definitely a separate discussion.
Yeah, I would say so too. I mean, we're pushing the 2-hour mark as it is. I mean, this will not be
a long inaugural podcast.
This will not be. This will not. God help me. This is not the the normal length of our podcasts. But even so, I mean, podcasts are generally supposed to be longer anyway, right? But I mean, it just goes to show how much we really had to cover. And really, I feel like we didn't really get into too many digressions here. I feel like we really tried to kind of fly through these games as quick as we could in discussing them, right?
And with giving them proper attention, based on what they were. But yeah, it really just was a jam-packed year. There was stuff we just didn't talk about really at all too, that we could have spent time on. But we kind of just focused on the highlights, and I didn't mention anything about Company of Heroes or anything like that. And I played that. Well, now I did, yeah. I mentioned that it existed, but yeah, but this was just such a jam-packed year, and it's very unusual. We don't normally have years like this where there's just a constant barrage of games. But it feels like every month there's been like a big, like almost must-buy game that came out.
Yeah, I mean, it really. When I was younger, probably up until about 2019, I would, on average, spend anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 just on new release video games a year. That's not even including stuff I buy like out in the wild for like my retro collections. And then 2020 up until the end of 2022, I was lucky if I was spending like $200 a year. I think last year I bought Elden Ring, the Collector's Edition, and the God of War Ragnarok Collector's Edition. And that was it for 2022. There might have been like a sporadic new release that I just kind of picked up off the shelf. But that was it. And I'm looking at all these other games. I picked up Dead Space Remake, Resident Evil 4, Hogwarts Legacy, Kirby, Tears of the Kingdom, Pikmin 4, and I'm going to be getting Lies of P, MGS Master Collection, Spider-Man 2, Super Mario Wonder, Super Mario RPG, Pikmin 1 and 2. I completely forgot about Detective Pikachu. I'm getting I didn't play the first Detective Pikachu. I saw the trailer for the Detective Pikachu Returns. I was like, that just looks like a quirky game. I'm going to check it out. If it can make me laugh, I'm okay with that. As I'm getting older, and not to mention, we're family men now, you know, and the kids are starting to watch what I'm doing on screen. And the baby Rorschach, she very much enjoys when she sees Pokemon on the TV. And so it gives me an excuse to have something else going on as well, and kind of have her engage with me while I'm enjoying my hobby. But it's nuts, you know. And this is
I think like I mean I think last year, for perspective, I think I only bought like maybe 2 or 3 games, like, you know, for the whole year, like new games. Like it was, I played a lot of old stuff too, but in terms of like new releases, I got Ghostwire Tokyo because I wanted to check it out. I was curious about it, and it definitely was not a day one buy game, but I got it anyway. So I got Ghostwire Tokyo, I got Callisto Protocol because I was really looking forward to that
too. That's right.
And I think I got Scorn day one. Oof. But beyond that, I can't really think of much else I got day one or like without a heavy discount. You know what I mean? Like and this year's the total opposite. Like I got Dead Space, I got Resident Evil 4, I got Hogwarts, I'm getting Armored Core day one, I got Starfield day one. You know, it's just like boom, boom, boom. There's tons of games.
Yeah. All in all, great 2023, I would say. Great year for games. I'm very much looking forward to what we got coming to us for 2023. Gamescom should be interesting. I'm wondering if we'll get any big announcements at Gamescom, and you know, hopefully something exciting happens there for somebody. I don't care who, just something. Yeah. No, and I was saying like I don't think 2024. There's no way it can be anywhere near this packed. You know, it's you know I can think of some games that are coming in 2024, but it's like, man, like nothing compared to this year. Well, I think the big rumor right now for 2024, and this is pure speculation, but we're going to get a new Nintendo console. So that might be the big buzz for 2024. And I mean, they could do what they did with the Switch. I mean, if you look back on the Switch, really think about it, it was rumored heavily for quite some time, and then they officially announced it in like November or December that, okay, this is coming out. And then a month later, they did the release date of it coming out in like March. So, I mean, they had a 3-month window from when they announced it to releasing it. And so we may very well get the same thing for their next new console. Which would be cool. I'd be cool with that. But yeah, it's hard to imagine. 2024, we might get Silent Hill 2, which, speaking of remakes and re-envisioning, there's a couple of YouTubers I follow, one of which is Under the Mail. I really like his content. He does a lot of good content on survival horror games in general. And he made a good point that Bloober Team, what are they going to do with this game? In this modern era, if you look at the story of Silent Hill 2 and, you know, what James Sunderland goes through and what he encounters, can you tell that story in today's society? I don't know if you can.
Yeah, it's there's a lot to it that there's some touchy subjects in there. Not even just with James' story, but also with Angela's story as well too.
Angela's.
Yeah, that I could see being, you know, just what we talked about. We started this video even talking about the trend of revising in these games for a modern audience, and Silent Hill 2 came out, you know, 20 years ago now, over 20 years ago. So it's a very different time in some ways. And yeah, I'm very, I'll be honest, in a lot of ways I'm very pessimistic about this game. It just sounds like a bad idea from the start. It's like saying I'm going to try to, you know, it's a masterpiece. So, you know, you're not going to improve on it. Do something different, or go back and do like Silent Hill 1, like do a real like remaster of Silent Hill 1, which could actually probably use a remaster, like, you know, like update from the PlayStation 1 era.
It definitely could.
Well, I mean, there's some merit in the old graphics as well too, but I think it's aged a lot worse than compared to. I think PlayStation 1 era and N64 era games make really good like remakes and remasters because there's such a visual pop and upgrade where you just don't see that to the same degree. There's a lot of PS2 games, some of the better looking PS2 games that honestly kind of hold up pretty well, and they don't really. I mean, that was a big leap in graphical fidelity.
I would say PS2 titles hold up very well, even by today's standards. I mean, you go back. I was just messing around on Soul Reaver 2 for the PlayStation 2, but I was playing it on my PS3, and it's like, man, this game still looks pretty decent. Like, yeah, it's not as realistic as what we have nowadays, but it doesn't look ugly. It doesn't look hideous. Even Silent Hill 2. That game holds up pretty well. It's not hideous. It's not the prettiest thing you'll look at, but it's not a hideous looking game. It's not distractingly bad visually originally. And I just think that with the storyline of James, I mean, there's multiple endings with James, and really there isn't. If I'm interpreting it correctly, there isn't one where he really truly feels remorse for what he did. He's just kind of. I guess there's the lake ending. I guess. You
well, no, I disagree. I disagree with that. It depends on what you mean by remorse. Like I mean, there's endings where he clearly has not learned kind of what kind of the lesson, I guess, that's to be told about how to handle the guilt and kind of what he's done. There's endings like the Maria ending is like it's basically implying that he's kind of learned nothing essentially.
Right.
There's the In Water ending, which is kind of I think also kind of the incorrect kind of the despair ending. It's how do we handle guilt? We don't handle it. We just give up completely, and we can't live with it at all. There is the Rebirth ending, which is kind of the denial ending. There's the the rationalization. We can kind of make everything right. I'm not going to live with my consequences ending. That's kind of what Rebirth is all about.
Yeah.
I think the Leave ending is meant to be the kind of the good ending of the game, kind of the good plus ending of the game, where James acknowledges what happened. He leaves the town, but he also is kind of able to accept responsibility for what he's done, and he leaves with Flora as well too. So I think that was sort of the kind of, in a way, honoring the wishes of Mary in that story.
I suppose I forgot about the Laura ending.
Yeah, that was that's sort of like their in a kind of in a way like an adopted daughter of sorts, and which is kind of fitting for Silent Hill because that's what happened in the first game too. Is about an adopted daughter. So it is I think that's kind of the optimistic, kind of cheerful ending to the game. And then you have Silent Hill 4, which kind of implies that doesn't happen. So, right. Yeah, so with a little drop of dialogue. But I mean, I don't know how much stock you put into that, because, but yeah, that's how I interpret.
Can you tell that in any of those endings, you can kind of like, I guess you as the player could kind of feel with James, right? Like, man, yeah, what do I do in that situation? How would I feel? How would I interpret that? Like, man, I get it. Like, he wasn't happy with Mary, and
I think it's supposed to, what that game does really well, and not to get off on a big rant about Silent Hill, but I think what that game does really well is it presents more so than pretty much any other game I've come across, and it is the idea of a kind of a moral failing in someone that is complex.
Yeah.
And and I think that's actually a lot more true to real world situations. A lot of real world situations are not necessarily always very. There's a lot of mixed motivations to a lot of them. Like, and that's how you can kind of see what James is doing. In some ways, what James did, there's nuance to it. Exactly. Mm-hmm. In some ways, what James did was actually in accordance with what Mary wanted. She was miserable, or her disease was wasting her away. Part of her did want to die. But also part of her did want to live, and James was coming at this from the perspective of a husband that was frustrated and angry and was really abused by Mary in a lot of ways. That's and verbally abused by her.
Yes.
And was disgusted with her degradation in her physical appearance. So there was a lot of in some ways, yeah. It was
selfishness too.
It was very self-serving to get rid of her, but also at the same time, it was a mercy killing, but it was also a self-serving type of gesture as well too, which is what makes it kind of complicated and nuanced. And that's kind of the moral dilemma from the other characters as well. It's the same thing with Eddie. Eddie, of course, kills as well too, but it's also, we also understand his history of being, kind of the butt of jokes and being bullied essentially. Mm-hmm. We understand where he's coming from. He was kind of a victim in a way. Angela was obviously a victim as well too of her father. So I think but that doesn't necessarily excuse what she does. Mm-hmm. But I think that's what the game does really well is it gives this kind of sort of complicated motivations and kind of layers to the guilt that these characters experience. I think it does it really, really well.
But will our modern society allow that story to be told? I can
probably not. I don't think so.
I can already see that the articles of James Sunderland is why should we play a game where a piece of shit husband kills his wife in cold blood
and then fantasizes about a ultra sexualized version of her coming to life and running off of her, and exactly.
I hope Bluebird Team, from what I understand, I've played the medium, and I didn't finish it, but it looked interesting, and I played it, and from what I played, I didn't hate it. It was definitely inspired by games like Silent Hill. You could see that they were inspired on that. I almost feel like that was their job interview for Konami, to be honest. I feel like the medium was like their interview to Konami, like, hey, we do like Silent Hill.
We can do this.
We can do this. Look at what we can do. And I really hope that they stick to the source material. Games like Resident Evil 4, you can kind of sway out of the storyline a little bit. You can kind of make changes and it won't really impact a whole lot. But a game like Silent Hill 2, I feel like even the slightest change could really ruin the original meaning of the story and the original purpose of the narrative that's being told. And
I was going to say, I think, fans, especially like myself, are just not going to be forgiving of drastic, sweeping changes. And not in the same way that we'd be forgiving of that with a Resident Evil 4. I didn't really have any major problems with, like, the story changes to Resident Evil 4. I think there's only, like, one or two minor nitpicks I have with that. I mean, it's more or less the same game, but there's some different beats here and there. I don't have a real problem with that. I don't really have a real problem with the changes they made for like Dead Space, even for the most part. Little tiny story changes and alterations. I don't have a problem with that either. Silent Hill, though, is very different. That's what we remember about the game. We remember the atmosphere. We remember the story. We remember the
Maria has to be a sexy-looking woman in the remake. She has to be, because that's the whole purpose of her character. Like, you can't give Maria, a wool sweater with mom jeans, and have the same effect.
I'll be very curious to see what they make her look like. I mean, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, you can't pull what they've done in some other games and desexualize her. That's the whole point of her character.
You can't gloss over the fact of Angela being, molested by her, father and brother. You can't just skim over that. Like, those are important story beats. I feel like Eddie's story they wouldn't change at all. Honestly, that might be the one thing that gets praised by modern journalism. It's like, see, this is what happens when you bully people, and then you're gonna rue what, or you're gonna reap what you sow.
Well, Eddie kind of represents. I mean, like, so not to get off on a big tangent on that, but I mean, Eddie's a guy. I don't think a lot of modern our culture really doesn't care about hurting a guy's feelings. Right. Eddie's a guy, and he kind of fits that incel archetype
Yep.
And if anything, I think we probably would be much more cruel to him today than we would be back in the era when the game was originally released.
Yeah.
If anything, I think they could look down on him. Oh, he's just like he's this crazy incel. That's exactly how they are, and they're violent by nature, and it's just I think that's that. If anything, they're going to be even more less favorable to him now than before.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good way to end it on the speculation of Silent Hill 2. We're both pretty big fans of the series in general. And, we kind of started off talking about remakes and kind of brought it full circle, with games that we've played that have been remakes, games that are coming out that are going to be remakes, and just kind of, what we're hoping to see in them. And I hope Bloober does a well enough job with it, but that's a tough one. That's a tough game. And I don't envy them, because I feel like no matter what they do, it's a lose situation. They're not going to win with this remake. Either they're going to piss off the fan base of Silent Hill 2, or they're going to piss off the journalists. And I think it's not a position I want to be in.
Yeah, no, I'm not the least bit optimistic for it. I'm sorry. I did another video on Silent Hill Ascension on the channel, and
that'll be game of the year, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, if that's anything to go by, if that's a taste of what's to come, I really wish the series would just stay dead and dormant. I wish they would go in a different direction. If Konami really wants to do like a remake, I mean, they're already doing Metal Gear. I wish we would see like a Castlevania remake, because Castlevania is another series where the story kind of doesn't really matter. The story writes itself. Dracula is resurrected. We gotta stop him. So that's the Castlevania story for almost every game. So. Sure. Just go for that. You don't have to worry about some kind of nuanced story that you're going to ruin or piss off the fans over. Just remake the game, make it look nice and pretty, and it'll print money. Whereas Silent Hill 2 is going to be, remake is going to be very polarizing, I think. So we'll see.
Yeah, that we will. Well, how do we want to end this today? Covered a lot of topics.
With a bang. With a bang.
With a bang.
No, I think that's. I mean, like I said, obviously, it's a crazy packed year, and that's pretty awesome. That's pretty exciting. I'm kind of worried about next year. I don't know how you really top 2023 for the sheer number of quality games. So I mean, we'll see. Maybe next year will just be kind of a quiet year. We'll see. But so I guess it's good in the wallet if nothing else. But. Yeah, I just this has been a fat, but really, I think, great year.
Yeah, let us know in the comments below if you agree with anything we spoke about, or if we think we're completely off base, whether it's regarding Hogwarts Legacy, Silent Hill 2, or any of the other games that we discussed. Let us know what you're looking forward to. We want to engage with you guys. We are happy to do so. Don't forget to click that like and subscribe button. That definitely helps us out too. We want to get that traction going. We are a video game channel made by gamers for gamers, and that's what we intend to do. Keep an eye out for these podcasts. I'm hoping to have us do these more regularly. Discuss. Today was our inaugural one where we kind of talk about the year so far and what's to come. Hopefully. Going forward, we'll have more relevant gaming news to talk about. Right now, it's the summertime, so not a whole lot happening. But we do have Gamescom coming up at the end of August. We've got a lot of stuff coming up at the end of toward the end of the year. A lot of unboxings coming up. So we definitely have a lot of content in the pipeline for you guys. So those are my final thoughts. Anything from you, Spectre?
Yeah, like I said, definitely engage with us. We got a lot coming. Just on unboxings alone, I think we have like at least 6 or 7, if probably upwards almost of 10, kind of on the docket here that are coming up. But it's just a matter of when they actually come out and when we get the games for some of them. So we'll be doing plenty of unboxings, plenty of other content, a lot more collection content as well too. So yeah, just stay tuned. We kind of do a little bit of everything. We're game enthusiasts here. That's probably what we should have called the channel instead. Right. But so we got a lot of stuff coming up here.
Well, thank you so much for watching. I am Rorschach with the Game Reactionists.
And I'm Spectre.
And you guys have a wonderful evening.